extreme,
exaggerated,
intense,
excess,
irritable,
stress,
chemical,
imbalance,
depressed,
manic, black or white,
all or nothing,
mania, depression,
can take on anything.
on top of the world,
empty,
suicidal,
life,
death,
suicide,
manic depression,
bipolar,
bipolar,
Bipolar.
bipolar,
bipolar,
bipolar.
bipolar.
Could you give me a general explanation of how you felt before you were diagnosed?
Oh, I was kind of on a roller coaster, the ups and downs really, they really were my life, ups and downs constantly.
Like I was living in hell. Nothing made much sense. My behavior was terrible. My vocabulary was terrible. My feelings were always anger. And the hard part about it is that when I was angry, I didn't know why.
Pretty confused, angry, really oblivious to the disorder.
It was just sort of like I knew something was wrong. I knew that I wasn't normal, but I couldn't quite pinpoint what it was. There were just ups and downs that were really extreme. And from a young age, I can remember having issues with depression or issues with lashing out. And I just didn't really know what was wrong. I just kind of tried to write it off like I was crazy, or if I ignored it, it would go away.
Before I was diagnosed, I dealt with a lot of, when I was younger, probably in junior high, I would get really paranoid and anxious for periods of time, and I would ask my parents, like, there's something not right with me. There's something not right. And they're like, oh, it's nothing. So, I was really depressed, but I have kind of a interesting upbringing. So it's the upbringing and, psychological stuff paired with my mental state, paired with the chemical imbalance. So, I was really depressed, very alone. If I was in trouble with my parents, I kind of acted out. I would talk back to them, so I was always in trouble. Always in trouble.
I was a child in the 50s, and one didn't act differently from other people, or it wasn't acceptable, so I spent all of my time knowing that something was different about me, but I didn't know what it was. And my parents wouldn't discuss it. They said I was different, but they wouldn't discuss how or why. I just knew I wasn't the same. So I always felt that there was something wrong with me inside, and that it wasn't okay for other people to know. It had to be a secret.
Can you tell me when you were diagnosed and how it felt once you were diagnosed?
I was diagnosed in 1994. I checked myself into the hospital. I was so sick and tired of being sick and tired. I was very suicidal at the time. I had a gun, and I had drank many different types of liquor. And I made the phone call, and the man at the other end of the phone literally saved my life, because he got me in the hospital right away.
I was diagnosed in December of last year, and it was sort of like getting a gift, because it cleared up a lot of misunderstandings I was having, and explained a lot of why people reacted the way they did to me, and helped me understand myself a lot more.
I was diagnosed at 16 in 2002, and I specifically remember the counselor telling me that bipolar people always make the wrong decisions. And I don't think I'll ever forget that, because I feel like every time I'm upset or I'm unhappy in my life, that it's just the bipolar.
Originally, I was diagnosed about probably 10 years ago. It was hard for me to accept. It was kind of embarrassing, I guess, to a point, to be kind of labeled as bipolar.
Started out with a diagnosis of depression. So I was diagnosed with depression when I was probably about a senior in high school, around the time my grandmother died. And it wasn't really surprising, that one. But it took a couple of years after that until I got the diagnosis for bipolar. I remember I was going to my 5th university in 6 years. which tells you something. And I remember going to see the psychiatrist that they offered through the school, and I had this drawing that I had made, and I took it to her, and it was, you know, you see people do the ups and downs that they have, and I said, you know, I have these ups and downs, but at the top it does this, and at the bottom it does this. So I had this drawing that looked like waves, and I showed it to her, and I said, this is how I describe what's going on with me. Can you tell me what it is? And that was when I got the diagnosis. And it felt like a relief, because I knew something was wrong with me. I could feel it, I knew it, but I wasn't sure what it was. And then I was able to feel a little bit more free.
I didn't believe it. I just didn't believe it. I said, that doctor's crazy, not me. And a year later is when I did realize that there's something going on, and I had a second episode a year later that was severe. And it's actually the son of the initial doctor who did the correct diagnosis. And at least in the hospital, I had another doctor diagnose me as bipolar, manic depressive at the time. But I didn't believe that either. And the third doctor, the son of the first, he diagnosed me, and it started to sink in that maybe I am bipolar, maybe I am manic depressive, and I resisted against it. I didn't want to be. So I was trying to figure out ways to fix it or solve it. So that was my initial reaction.
Once I started seeing doctors about it, it made a lot of sense, but it added a lot of confusion. Treatment for bipolar is not cut and dry. The medications aren't very predictable in some cases, and you never know quite what you're going to get when you start a new treatment program.
When I first was diagnosed, I was relieved. I was like, okay, there's something we can do about it.
I was diagnosed when I was 18 after a very significant, severe manic/psychotic episode, and I freaked out. I freaked out. I first of all, I was traumatized by the episode, period. And then finding out I have bipolar disorder, I just freaked out. I thought that, you know, no guy's ever going to want to date me. I'm going to have to be on medication. I'm going to be judged. I'm not going to be able to fulfill the dreams and goals that I want in life because of this. You know, I felt it was going to be a handicap. And I definitely initially freaked out.
I was diagnosed at age 14. At least, I'm pretty sure it was about 14. Yeah, and it was really, really hard hitting because of what happened during that time period. So, yeah, it's not easy to get diagnosed at an early age like that.
At the moment, I don't know if I felt anything, because I was numb. I had a numb thing going on anyway. And when he told me that, I didn't know what it was. And so after he explained it, then I was afraid, because I realized I wasn't the only one in the family who had it, and it, sort of explained a lot of things about my family, and then I thought I was going to be just like them, and that scared me. But on the other hand, there was treatment for it, so that made me feel good. There's some kind of treatment to make a lot of the symptoms better. So it's kind of a mixed thing.
And at one point, the nurse asked me how I was feeling, and I said, I'm not really sure. I said, I don't feel real happy, but I don't feel real sad either. And she says, well, that's normal.
Did you tell any of your friends, family members, or partners? And if so, how did they respond? If not, why not?
The family members, I told them. It was a little harder to let friends and other people know, because it's just, again, it's embarrassing, it seems. You just kind of feel like people treat you as a freak or something when they realize you have it. So
while my family, I think for them, it's really painful. You know, for my parents, they can't do anything about it. They can't do anything to help me. I was adopted, so there's no way to really track it back. And so in some ways that was hard too, because I felt like saying sorry, maybe you got a lemon. But I'm not shy. And if someone doesn't understand, I'm really happy to talk to them about it. But it does cause destruction. I'm very apologetic for the destruction. But it's just who I am. It's what's going on. So.
As time went on, and as I would get into different social environments, I found myself embarrassed and not wanting to tell anybody that I was bipolar or manic depressive, simply because it's just not easy to deal with. The reactions or the preconceived notions or prejudices are not easy for me to deal with after the fact, because you never know how somebody's going to react.
Generally speaking, when I'm manic, I'm very energetic, I'm excited, I'm busy, I'm doing lots of stuff, which is the positive side because I get a lot done. The downside is that I can spread myself too thin and actually overtire myself, and then that leads to a downside and leads into a spiral depression.
You feel really euphoric and you think that there's nothing that you can't do, and the further it goes into it, the less sleep that you get, the less that you're actually able to do. You find that when you're so high, so to speak, and hyped up, you don't notice that you're not getting things done. And then the thoughts that you're thinking bounce in and out so fast that you can't keep track of them. And so my parents and brothers and sisters and things like that, they were noticing what was going on. Of course, I wasn't. I was thinking everything was great, everything is fine, I've got lots of energy and able to do everything that I thought I wanted to do and could do, but not realizing that I really wasn't getting anything done. And so it gets intense and worse from there when you're in a full-blown manic episode, and your thoughts get distorted. And after the fact, you can look back and you can actually remember some of the thoughts that you're thinking, and you say, what was I thinking? And so it's not a comfortable situation after the fact, but while you're in it, you feel so great, creative thoughts, tons of energy to act on those thoughts, and it's a wonderful feeling, but it's very destructive after the fact or during it. And then when you realize that after the fact, it's not fun to be there. It's embarrassing to realize what you were thinking, saying, or doing really is not what's accurate or positive sometimes, and it's very emotional after the fact.
Driving down the freeway without a steering wheel on your car. It's more than likely you're going to crash and have a problem. Just a matter of what you're going to run into and how bad it's going to be. It escalates and snowballs, and especially if there's any aggression or physical confrontation involved, it gets out of hand quickly.
Just really overconfident, on top of the world. I could do anything and everything, and I told everybody I was going to do everything. Racing thoughts, couldn't sleep, just it's kind of like you're naturally high on drugs. It's kind of what mania is. You're naturally high.
Well, I first off view it as, something that it's generally the first sign of something being a little off. And if you catch it early, I think that's good, because you do have a lot of energy. You can get a lot done. I cleaned up a shop in 25 to 45 minutes in the theater shop, and that should have taken a few people, about a couple of hours. I did, bam, like that. There's the thing. You need writing done, you get done fast. But, all that aside, that's really not a net positive, I guess. That'd be the term. It's just not as much positive, because you can really, really, really make yourself do some stupid things when you're highly manic. And I remember when it was really, really bad, before we'd really gotten the medication fixed, before I'd gotten off the antipsychotics, those manic episodes, those are what led to all those nightmarish kind of paranoias. And, it's one of those things that, yeah, you can get a lot done. That's great. And if you can catch yourself doing it, if you can catch when you're there, you can mellow it out and you can just do what you have to do. And who knows, you might get done a little faster, but it's like the depression. I view it as you've just got to keep it in a range.
If you could, try to give me a general explanation of what it's like to go through a depressive episode.
You don't even want to come out of your room. You don't care about anything. You don't care about anybody. If you let friends down, if you miss a job or some type of appointment, you just don't care.
A lot of times I get to the point where I just get exhausted and sleep for hours on hours. Just feel there's no hope in life to go on.
It's the most horrible thing I've ever gone through. It's like going into a hole that never ends.
Suddenly everything that I have been doing, everything that I'm trying to do is just absolutely worthless. I lose focus on everything. I'll just scream and cry hysterically in a desperation to get help or to get out of the black hole that I'm in. It feels like you're in a tar pit, really, and it's just suffocating you, and you're falling, you can't get out, just you're covered with this sticky, goop, and you just can't get out of it without some sort of help, some sort of resources.
You really just don't feel like living anymore. I mean, I've been suicidal many times. You just don't want to live anymore. Like, life is over. What's the point of being here? I don't see any light. You don't see any light at the end of the tunnel. Nothing is going to be better. It sucks. It really sucks. I hate it. But I always know that I'm going to get through it. That's why I stick it out. I know that it will pass. You just have to know that it will pass, because it will. You just have to be strong and fight it, but it does suck.
The world would seem like it was coming tumbling around me, tumbling down around me. And it was very, very frightening, totally frightening. I lost control. I would cry hysterically. I'd, crash my head into the pillows on my bed. I'd not be able to move for several hours off the bed. Sometimes I'd go on the floor and just lie face down. It was really very upsetting.
Could you tell me about a pivotal moment involving the disorder? For example, a manic or depressive episode that changed your life.
Well, there was a really bad depressive episode when I was 14 where it was early morning and I was supposed to go to school, and I woke up just in a panic. I don't know why. I went and grabbed a really large knife from the kitchen and went over to my mother and put it to my wrist and said, "If you don't get me help right now, I will kill myself right here." And she said okay, and we got in the car, and she took the knife from me and threw it in the back of the car, and we went to one of the closer mental hospitals, and I was put in inpatient under a 72-hour hold.
By the time I ended up getting in the fight and getting stabbed in my face, I kind of realized that something was wrong and I needed to make some changes in my life, I think.
I was driving a 16,000-pound tow truck with a Suburban on the back of it, and I went into a complete, total psychotic rage. I don't really understand why, but it was frightening to me. Felt like I was fixing to run people off the road. I don't know how it happened. There's nothing in particular that provoked it, and I couldn't turn it off. It cost me my job.
Sometime in mid-2009, I had got so depressed and so just tired of trying different medications and different therapies and having nothing work, and had really just got to the point where I was suicidal all of the time, and I didn't feel like anything was working. None of the meds had worked, and I was in therapy and doing all of these things, and I ended up I had a doctor that recommended electric shock therapy. And so for me, that was the turning point of my life, because it's sort of, at the time it was incredible, this decision to do shock treatments. And I read all these autobiographies and memoirs of Kitty Dukakis and Carrie Fisher and these people that said, oh, they had a little bit of memory loss, but it was worth it. And so I thought, well, I can hang with them, so I'll have shock treatments. And so I started shock therapy in the end of September of 2009 and had about 13 treatments in all, I think. And at first it was incredible because it sort of pulled me out of the depression so fast, like nothing had ever done before. You know, I went from not even living my life at all, just going through the motions, to literally being shocked back into life. But then after having a few more weeks of the treatments as it went on, the memory loss started to come in. And I didn't really realize until I stopped the treatments how much of an impact the memory loss was going to have. And it's changed my life forever. So in a way, the shock therapy was awesome because it pulled me out of that depression that I couldn't find my way out of, but it changed my life in ways that I'm still discovering. It's like the ECT pulled me out of probably the darkest depression of my life, but it created this whole world of problems, of learning how to navigate things as simple as finding my way to the store or the highway, which has become a joke amongst my friends and me. I sort of call people, or, you know, I have Post-it notes with directions written down that I pull out so no one will know that I still can't find my way. The relationship with my daughter at first, I thought, you know, as a mom, there's this mom, no one can break the bond between a mother and a child. You just can't break that bond. But after the shock therapies, she was so unfamiliar to me that I would have moments where I would look and I would say, I can't remember her name. So while I felt emotionally strong enough after being pulled out of this depression by the shock treatments, the strength it requires to learn how to be friends with people that you've been friends with for years, to learn how to drive down the street to get milk, to do these things that I always took for granted. And in all my years of studying yoga and Buddhism and meditation and all of this, I always wanted to have that mindfulness of being in the moment. And I always got on some level that all we have is right here. It's the only thing we can count on, because everything behind us has already slipped through our fingers, and everything in front of us, we can't control it. Doesn't matter how hard you try to make a plan, you can't control it. So all we have is right now, this right here. But now I feel like I should have been careful when I wished for that Buddha mind of being only present and only having this moment, because it's scary to wake up and not have a past, or to know things about your past that seem unfamiliar, and to have people tell you about things that you don't remember, and you can see the hurt in their eyes when you don't remember important things.
Don't be afraid, because the small percentage that do these terrible things that you read about in the paper are such a minute and small amount that are so deeply disturbed. But the majority of the folks with bipolar are struggling daily just to do the right thing. And please, 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 I beg you, don't throw away people that are diagnosed with bipolar. We have so much to give, and some of us make mistakes. I've made mistakes, and I'll continue to make mistakes. But most of us are trying desperately to do the right thing. We really are. And when you look at us like we're not right, that just puts us further back.
It is a very difficult and misunderstood disorder that is way more than just being up and down. It's way more than just crying one second and lashing out another. It's so much more than that.
If you know someone who's bipolar, I would say don't try to think much. You just know, oh, they have bipolar. My son has bipolar. What am I going to do? My son just got diagnosed bipolar. Or my daughter just got that. I know, or I just met a man and he's got bipolar. How am I going to handle this? Or vice versa. It's very simple. Just accept them for who they are.
I think bipolar is like being in a boat on an ocean by yourself. There's other people, but they're all on their own boats doing their own thing. But you're in this boat on this ocean, and in one hand you hold the chain to an anchor, and in the other hand you hold the strings to a kite. And the kite is the mania, and the anchor is the depression. And your job is to keep the kite from flying you away and keep the anchor from bringing you all the way down to the bottom of the ocean. And so being bipolar is this fine balancing act of keeping yourself afloat in the boat. With the kite string here, I've got my reminder. The kite string there, and the anchor is here. And you've got to hold them really strong and really tight